Welcome to the Self-Publishing School podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to sell more books. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from people just like you and from the most successful authors on the planet. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of my new book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Grace Valentine. Grace is an author, blogger, podcast host, and a speaker. She's the author of the book, Is It Just Me? And her upcoming book, To the Girl Looking for More. Her readers love that she's so relatable. They say her fresh voice helps them navigate their own faith in life, which helps her fulfill her mission to show others that Christianity is an adventure worth living. So today we're going to be talking about, she's launched multiple books successfully, including getting a book deal at a young age. And so we got a lot of different just pieces that that we'll be talking about in this interview. And she's got an upcoming book. So we'll kind of get a little bit of a behind the scenes of what she's doing to launch this next book. Grace, welcome. Great to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here, Chandler. And this is such a cool resource that you have going on. And so I'm honored to be a part of it, even if it's just this one little podcast. So I'm thankful for everyone listening and the ministry you have in this publishing industry.
Thanks. I appreciate it. So I guess for starters, why books?
Yeah,
honestly, you got 3 out, you got one more on the way. Like this.
Obviously, I like them. I know,
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah. And it's not just to make money at this point. I honestly, I'm 26 for everyone listening. So I know I'm younger. And my first book came out right after I graduated college, and I got the publishing deal while I was in college. And I started blogs, and it did well. And I honestly was so naive when I was young and I wanted to write a book. I was like, God called me to writing a book. Like, it's going to happen. And I think how naive I was really helped me and protected me, that I didn't look at the stats and think it couldn't be me. I just very much was like, oh, I feel this on my heart. There's a desire, and I feel like it's for a good reason. And I love the quote, be who you needed when you were younger. And that just really resonated with me. And I'm like, you know what? I want to write almost like the survival guide, or something that helps younger women, especially people in college, people in high school, even people recently post-grad. And so that's kind of why books. And I'm like a girl who grew up on Taylor Swift too. Like words are powerful. Taylor Swift was my queen growing up, still is, and going to the big tour. And so I just really realized that storytelling is a beautiful gift and an art, and I can't sing, so you'll never hear a song from me. But I was like, how cool would it be to for me, also religion and the Bible have been like a great tool for me that helped comforted me and been there for me in hard times. And so I was like, how cool would it be if I told a story of my own life, but then relate it to a story in the Bible? And it's not going to be as like Taylor Swift song-esque, but it would be opening my life up in a way that was still respecting, boundaries and everything. But yeah, that was kind of my heart behind it a little bit.
Cool. That's awesome. I love that. So you're clear on who you're writing to, clear on what the book's about. I think that's a really smart, I love the structure of, all right, there's a story from the Bible, story of personal life. So it's kind of making scripture more attainable. You talked about, first book I think you said first book at 22. Or how
it came out at 22, but I signed my publishing deal. Gosh. And, I felt so old at the time. Like, I was like, I am so wise. I look back, I'm like, why did they sign me? Thank you guys. But I signed my first publishing deal when I was 21. So I was really young. Wow. And it came out when I was maybe 22. Actually, I signed it when I was 20, I want to say. Actually, I signed it when I was 20 and it came out when I was 22. And so crazy to think about now.
That's nuts. So how did you get a publishing deal at 20 years old?
Yeah, I really don't know. I used to work for some websites that were like, I would do funny pieces for them. This is before like God softened my heart. And then I suddenly started writing my own blog, and it was doing really well. And I used some of the funny pieces, brought it to my blog, but then add some more spiritual pieces. And I did some of those Christian pieces on those blogs. And then suddenly other websites started to reach out, like Thought Catalog, which they'd be like, can we take out the Bible verse? And I was a firm believer in, I will allow anyone to take out a Bible verse if that's going to sit it, because maybe they'll come on my blog and they'll see scripture. Like, I'm all for like the idea of, you know what a cool opportunity to be that. I'll respect their platform and what they want to do, and maybe make it a little different. And so then like for every mom, like mom blogs, and they would always ask me to contribute. And I remember there was the original website I was working for asked for more like they want to own my writing. They were like, this is so great. We'll pay you more, but we want to own it. And in my head, I was like, I think God very much made it clear. He was like, what if you write this in a book? Like, you don't want to give away your writing now. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And then I just literally, my friend, I was with her yesterday, actually, who's known me since I was saying I want to write a book when I was like 19, 18. I bought books on Amazon saying like how to write a book, like traditionally published. I bought a book of like 101 literary agents and I just emailed them all, like very eager. And one randomly thought I was worth it. And I had like my blog views, and at that point it was 2 million, but I didn't have a crazy social media following. But I think I just knew, let me talk about what I do have. And there's some things I don't have, but like, I don't have a famous family. My never was on a reality show, never cried about a boy on TV. Like, I didn't have any of those things, and that's okay. I just talked about what I did have and the giftings that God had given me. And even using the same thing, like people said I was too young to do it. And some publishers and some agents didn't want me because I was too young. And I remember being like, you know what, they're lost. Like, I think my age can almost help me in some ways because they can see me as a friend. They can see me as a big sister, not as someone older. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just like when you're older, you have wisdom to bring. Like there's something that you have that the young people don't. And so I think I just very much elevated myself when talking to them with a lot of confidence about the things I did have, and that even the weaknesses they saw were things that God was going to use for his strength. And so like my age didn't disqualify me, because that only made me more relatable to some of them, even though it did disqualify me from some publishers. And so that was very much the trick in the process.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And I think the thing that I don't want people to gloss over is reading the books and reaching out to 100 literary agents. And these people didn't just find you. You put in the work to get the book in front of people. I think that's really awesome. Grace, you talked about, writing for different blogs and stuff and saying, hey, can we take out that Bible verse or that sort of thing? When it came to your book, did you struggle with like, hey, how much of my faith should I put in the book? Should I go, like, was that ever an issue? And what's your take on that? Because I know for a lot of people that like, that's a tricky thing. It's like, all right, do I write an overtly faith-based book where it's like, all right, very clear, this is the book about my faith in Christianity? Do I do a hybrid? Do I kind of try to sneak it in there? Like how did you settle on what was best for you?
Yeah, you know what? I think it really depends on seasons. And I'm very thankful that most of my followers are not the typical church girls. Like right now, I speak a lot, and those are my main followers. And I go to a lot of sorority houses. Like I've been to churches and I've spoken at youth groups, but like I will go to like Bama sorority, Old Row, and show up, and I have some speaking gigs coming up around the time this comes out. And it's such a cool opportunity, I think, because it's not where they ever expected to meet Jesus, probably in a sorority house. Like they probably didn't expect that, but I love that I can use my relatability. And I don't just immediately say, repent, you crazy sorority girls. But as a former sorority girl, I will relate to them, laugh with them, share a story, and then talk about scripture. And so in my first book, actually, God wasn't mentioned on the title at all. And that was purposeful. It's called Am I Enough? Embracing the Truth About Who You Are. And that book did very well. And it's now even translated into Dutch, which I don't know why Dutch. I don't know if it's because I'm blonde headed and they're like, oh, she's one of us, and I was very excited about that. That was purposeful because I feel like I relate. I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, or like the suburbs. I relate to a lot of the people who aren't as much like Bible Belt, like, or people who are confident in reading scripture. I don't want them to think it's going to be boring. And so I'm a firm believer that it is so good to always have arms that are open wide to people from all different walks. But that doesn't mean you need to negate something that you feel called to. My third book was called What Will They Think? And it says 9 women in the Bible who can help you live life boldly. That book I purposely decided because I was like, this is like the big sister of all the other books. This is for the girls who are ready to dig deep into a certain kind of study. And so I think it just depends on the book, and remembering that your first book won't be your last if you feel like you're called to be an author. Like there'll be plenty of times to write a Bible study, to write that. But sometimes also the first book you do write, you have to think of that one, like who is your person? I play a game when I write, and I'm like obviously I like to write to high schoolers, post-grad, college, but who is like my main target? And I'm like, her name is Mary Kate. She's from, South Mississippi, or she's from Tennessee. She didn't grow up going to church. Maybe she went to VBS growing up, but she stopped going to church. Her parents are divorced. She started drinking when she was 16 and like dated a guy. Like, I try to think of like who she would be. And what would she look at on the bookshelves and pick up? You know, what would Mary Kate want?
Mm.
And this isn't based off a real person. This is based off who my niche and my target demographic is. And so, and I'll naturally have Mary Kate's friends who are older or younger find it, but like, that's my heart behind it. So I like to think, who would she? But then by my third book, I was like, I hope Mary Kate's ready for something a little more scripture based. Like, so this could be
Cool.
the next thing. And so that's my heart. But I think it's so important that everyone just pray about it and think of if your person is like already going to church, but feeling dry in their faith, they might want more scripture. Like they might want more Bible throughout it because they're tired of just hearing John 3:16. But if you are also trying to reach someone who has never walked in the church, they're probably not ready to hear about the tabernacle or Old Testament things. Like that might scare them. And so just discern who that one in that niche is and think about what they would want.
That's great. That's really great. How do you do that? How did you get so clear on Mary Kate? And any tips for people who are struggling with all right, I want to write to everyone. Like this book's going to help everyone. Like, how did you get clear and how can other people get clear on exactly who they're writing to?
Yeah, honestly, it was trial and error. Like I started seeing what my giftings were because naturally I think a lot of people, and when I first started, I was like, I can relate to everyone, like the young girls, old girls, everyone would come to my page and feel seen. And then I started to just write more niche things. And that's when my following grew on social media too. I'd be like, I started realizing I've been through sorority rush. Not as many people have in the industry. If it's around August, I know what girls are feeling because I've been there putting on lipstick and an outfit, running around the house, trying to look cute and being so anxious. I remember being like, I'm going to do something for the girl going through sorority rush. And that blew up. That was one of the things that really blew me up. And I think it's because there was nothing else for it. It was something I could relate to. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I have a heart for girls who are similar to me. Like I looked at my own story and thought, what can I relate to? And so that is very much, I think, how it started when I created that plan where I was like, Mary Kate, this is what she's going through. This is her belief. And so I think it's also important to look at your own life and those little things. Like you grew up as a missionary's kid, maybe you should try to create curriculum for them when they're feeling like there's no one who understands. Like you grew up in a foster care. Like, is there any right now material for people in foster care? Trying to think of those things first and then letting God expand it after and letting it also expand to see, there's also going to be other things that you may not have gone through that you have a heart for. And so I first would try to write for everyone and I would do broad titles or broad posts on my blog or everything. But when I really started to think man, I care about the overwhelmed college student who's stressed about a final. Like, what can I write for them? That is when I was able to blow up. And so I think there's a quote that says, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And I think with writing, that's so important. Like you could do anything. Like you could write for little kids and do a fun, Miss Rachel, the YouTube, but Christian version, whatever it is. But you can't do that and appeal to the moms because you won't be good at both. And so try to find out who you feel like is your main purpose and letting God expand on that.
That's so great. Such great advice. And I think that's an area that a lot of authors struggle is getting clear on that one person that you're writing to. So it's funny. You're talking out the process that we talk about all the time. It's the 4 P's of a best-selling book: person, pain, promise, price. And this person thing. And I love how clearly you articulated that. It's like one person and it's very specific. And so I think that's a great takeaway for people who are listening to this, writing their book. I want to backtrack into.
I'm sorry. I want to hear that again. Person.
Yeah.
Pain. What's the next one?
Promise.
Price.
Yeah.
That's genius. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's what I did, but you actually put it in a cool alliteration. I didn't even realize I did that. Very good.
I think the fun thing about books is they force you to create concepts and frameworks where we had always kind of talked about that. But when I was writing, this is the second edition of my book, or one of my books. And I was like, all right, there needs to be a framework where people just remember that, it's memorable, right? And so the person is who's the one person that you're writing to. And I always recommend it's a person that you actually know in your life. And then you write them. What's the pain that they have that they know that they have? What's the promise that you're making through this book? And then the price point's pretty straightforward, depending on the book and genre and all that stuff, right? And so I love that you articulated that and you did that so clearly. And I can imagine that's how, probably part of the reason you were able to get a book deal at such a young age. I want to backtrack into that a little bit. Did you do a one book deal and then it did so well and they said, hey, we want to sign you for more books? Was it a multi-book deal from the start? How'd that work?
Yeah, it was a one book deal. They're like, we'll give this girl one shot. And I was lucky to get that shot. And I remember, you know, what's interesting too. I always joke, I had almost the same amount of pre-orders that I did when my following grew and for later books, because I just was full on, like, I'm going to give this my all. And everyone around me supported me. So I think there's something so beautiful about that, of that first chance you get and focusing on that message and not giving up. Like, don't think you're oversaturating your feed, like focus fully, like give it your all. And like, that's the book that's published in Dutch now, you know, and I published a lot more books with more following, but that book that I did in my college house with 7 girls, like that's the one that is able to keep going. And the other ones have done well, but I think that's like the beautiful thing of all. But yeah, just a one book deal. And then I think they had a second book option. So they technically were willing to talk about one, but they weren't banking on it. That's for sure.
And so did the first one just sell so well? That's why they wanted to take up the second option, or?
I sometimes I talk like I know a lot of this stuff, but I'm still learning the terminology. But I do think like their predictions, like in 6 months, it outdid their predictions, which is a big deal. Granted, their predictions weren't that crazy. I think naturally you write your first book, you're like, I can make the New York Times. Like, I know it. Like, and I was like, oh, my predictions were done. They go, you're actually doing really well. I'm like, oh, really? Like, you know, I was like, I was disappointed, but okay. Like, and it took me a while. You know, I was working a full-time job. I was struggling in post-grad. I was struggling with bills. Like, and I think anyone in the book world knows it doesn't immediately just pay you like crazy, if anything. Like, you're still juggling. Now speaking has become a great resource for me to do alongside my book, but I waited another 1.5 years, if not more, till I even submitted another book deal when they were asking for it. They're like, have you thought about that? I'm like, I don't know, I've been busy. And it's cool because I think I needed that time to wait for my next message. I needed to like grow in a lot of areas. And naturally, now I look back at my first book, I'm like, oh, do I cringe a little? But like, it's so cool that God used that to lead me to like now way more, you know? And I almost recently, like the Diva book I'm releasing soon, that was a 2-book deal with Thomas Nelson. But like, I only had 2 book tops. That was like, I was like, I'm guaranteed 2 books. Like, you know, I was like, I've made it. So I'm hoping in the future that my next deal will be more like 4 books is what I'm hoping.
Yeah. And the 2-book deal, is that 2 devotionals? Is that the what will they think? And then to the girl looking for more, or was it?
What will they think was technically not a devotional, but it was more of like it was a trade book, but they knew it was going to be more Bible for me than normal. And that was the purpose. And my devotional is, I look at it like, it's like almost like all 3 of my first books were question titles, and that was purpose. And I'm like, what will they think was kind of closing it out? So first was, am I enough? Like most young girls need to realize that they're enough because of Christ, not from the world. Then is it just me? Like, are you alone in this? And then that was the answer is no, like there's a God with you. And there's also people who need your story. And the last one was, what will they think? And the whole idea of that was, as a woman, living life bold and not caring what people think. Like, if you ask what will they think before you write a book, you know, you're going to miss out. On my first book, there was one chapter, I was like, well, I don't want my grandma to read it, so I'm going to write it different. And then I asked my publisher last minute, I was like, can I go back and change it? And they were so nice, because I was still new, and they let me change it right before it was published. And they're like, yeah, we agree. I'm like, wish you would have told me earlier, but so the idea of like, if you care what people think, you're going to miss out on like living your purpose. And so that was the conclusion of this. And this new devotionals to the girl looking for more, I look at it as like almost this like everyday walk, and based off my Instagram, like the mini books, like to the girl going through shame, to the girl feeling overwhelmed, to the girl ready to shine bright, like whatever it may be. It's supposed to be like a daily thing that they put in to walk with that and have all those questions answered. And it kind of talks about it all.
Yeah, that's cool. I hope you're loving this episode so far. So if you're serious about writing and publishing your book, we would love to chat with you and help create a custom plan. All right, so all you need to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule. Schedule a 45-minute consultation with one of the experts on my team. All right, let's implement what you're learning in this episode, and let's see how we can help with your book. Go to selfpublishing.com/schedule. And it's kind of fun having this whole thing come full. So my mentor and advisor for selfpublishing.com is Michael Hyatt, who used to run Thomas Nelson.
That reminds me of, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. That just gave me chills. I'm sure You can tell him if you ever talk to him. I was like in college, in my house, like looking at Michael Hyatt's resources for how to get published. Like, and I was like, Michael
cool.
Hyatt, if I ever meet him, like, so, and that's how it all starts. Like people listening to this, like it starts with research. Like people ask me how I got published. Like I researched, I figured it out. Like I was 19, but I was a little too eager and I just poured material into myself till I knew what to do.
That's cool. That's cool. I just talked to him yesterday. I'll talk to him in 2 weeks. I'll let him know.
Yeah, let him know that I'm here because of him.
That's fun. That's fun. Full circle. Now you just casually mentioned this in our talk just now, and then I see it in your Instagram bio is the author of many books and real books, and you use that term many books. Are these like self-published small books, or is that
no,
published,
that's
or like
funny you said that.
how do you call many books?
So when I was trying to work on my social media, I think naturally, and even publishers will be like, you should do what this person's doing. And I would try to do what certain authors were doing and it wouldn't fit. So I tried the whole like laughing in the one pics that a lot of women authors do, was not my thing. Like did not work. Long captions are not my thing. Then I tried to do like, and I love Bob Goff. I'm his biggest fan, but I tried to do like the one-liners, also not my thing. And I finally just like honestly was like, I tried to write down on a piece of paper, like, what do I enjoy writing? Like, what can I do on social media that's different and still keeps my brand and who I believe I am as a writer? And so I joked, I'm like, well, I love writing books, but like I can call them mini books. And I kind of started 2 years ago doing these swipe to read things for girls. And that's kind of what my devotional all is. And so it might be like for the college girl overwhelmed this week, for the high school girl sick of it, for the one when college sucks, like read this, for the post-grad struggling to fit in and find a job, or for the one who hates their job. And then it'll be like a little Devo. And that's kind of, and so I've called it mini books just because I'm like, I like books. I like writing many things on social media. And it kind of also, I use that term purposefully and they all know it's called mini books when I go speak, but that way they're reminded that I have real books. And so hopefully like, it's like, it puts the word book in their head without realizing it. So I'm hoping that also creates like well, like her mini books, maybe I'll like her real books. And so that is kind of the strategy in it.
Smart. I love that. That's awesome.
Because if they just look at me as a social media writer, they may forget I'm an author. They'll be like, she's an influencer. Totally. I'm like, ew, I don't want to ever take ads on Instagram. Like, I don't want to be an influencer. That is my nightmare. Like, I don't have any Amazon list, but I want to be an author. So I have to do something on my social media that connects to being an author.
That's cool. That's cool. I like this. I see why you're so relatable, Grace. I like the I don't know, it's just kind of a fun play on like, all right, anti-influencer. This is the way that I'm going to do it. And I think a lot of people relate to that. I want to talk about your new book, but I also want to cue in on, so you mentioned speaking after the first book, and hey, I think a lot of people know this, the book's not going to make you rich, but it could, we always say it's like this key that opens the door to Narnia. It's this world of opportunities that exists for published authors. And that place is magical. One of those things is speaking, right? So did you start getting speaking gigs after your first book? Did that pick up after multiple? Like, how is that the main revenue stream today? Like, how does that work with the speaking in the books?
Well, also, so the best thing about me is I've learned I always have multiple streams of income. So part of me is I still will randomly babysit. Like I'm 26 years old. Some of my friends are having babies. I'm like, I'm not better than a Venmo, $100 coming in, like I still randomly substitute teach. And it also like helps me. I like do it once every 2 months because I get to see high school kids and what they're thinking of. And it keeps me aware. But speaking is how I make the most revenue besides those two things and what helps keep the bills. After my first book, I'd get some requests and I honestly knew nothing about it. So I was like, ooh, yeah, I'll go anywhere. Like, they're like, what's your fee? I'm like, I didn't really know. And then I was working at a church at the time. So weekends were hard and I was a girls minister. And that also gave me good practice where I was able to practice on people locally, like for free. And I think that's made me a better speaker. And I like got to go to this thing in Nashville called SCORE, which helped me develop my speaking because my church sent me there. Really cool thing. I highly recommend it. Helped me learn more about basically like what I'm talking about. But finally, I think I would do some. And then after my second book, it picked up a lot more. And as my social media grew, and as I also started thinking about my niche, like, and I've been able to get more speaking gigs. So when I started just focusing also on the college girl, now groups know Grace is good with college girls. So we'll send her to this college ministry. We'll send her to, I go to sorority houses and they pay me, and how cool is it that a secular organization is paying this Christian Yahoo like to come up? And I still do like youth groups, youth ministries, women's ministries, all that, or even colleges sometimes will pay me just to talk about social media tips. And then I'll like I'll sneak cool opportunities. I just think that was kind of always, that kind of just developed naturally. But the one big thing that has helped me, and as it became more than I could handle, and I'm really bad at negotiating. That's why I love having an agent. Like I will just sell myself short sometimes because I want to say yes. But one of my friends started answering, and it's like people, I'm like, she's my manager. Like it's really just my friend. I've known her since we were
Cool.
16.
Yeah.
She makes 10% of my speaking gig fee. She
Cool.
negotiates it so she can help like understand, because sometimes it's like if it's a big sorority, I'm going to want to say yes no matter what, because what other better marketing for a new Devo book than sitting at a sorority house to very cool girls who might end up posting it. Like that'd be great. I want to say yes, but also I have to respect myself as a speaker and as a businesswoman and as someone new in the industry and as a babysitter, like, that I need the money too. And it can't be free. And so she deals with that. She negotiates for me and then she gets 10%. And I think that has been such a great system we have. And it's someone I trust. And I think sometimes in the field, it's so easy to start thinking like your first hire has to be someone so qualified because you don't know everything. And I'm like, it just has to be someone you trust. Like Haley is someone that I trust to answer my emails. Like she's got my back. She knows my heart. She knows my ministry. She can learn everything else. Like we can both learn together. But knowing that the person answering and talking to these people is someone who knows me as a friend first and as like a child of God, like that means more to me.
I love that agent concept. I mean, it's obviously not like a crazy new concept, but even just having someone that you know in your life being your agent to kind of jump over that free line, going from, all right, hey, I'll speak for free to it just makes it easier to get paid for those speaking gigs. And then
People take you more
who
seriously, it's like someone else answering, oh, Haley, and I'm like, little us is like on like FaceTime, like, okay, that sounds good. Like,
yeah.
It's a little bit of a fake it till you make it kind of mentality. So, but it works.
Well, I think it's smart to incentivize them based on speaking fees that are booked, because then they're incentivized and they make more money the more you speak and the more money you make from your speaking gigs. So it's a win-win all around. I like that structure. And
I would say one thing too about speaking, posting pictures of you speaking, then I'll get 20 requests. I would say it's so easy to like think like, I don't want to post and tag an organization, but when I post and say I'm going somewhere, then other people reach out and go, why can't you go here? And so if you get one speaking gig, if it is for free, and if you're starting off, post the crap out of it. Like show people that you're doing this. So this is a new revenue thing. This is a new thing that they can use you for. And also that could benefit their club, their church, their group, their ministry, their work meeting. Like this could benefit them. And so that has been a big help for me too, is just posting it.
That is really, really smart. Love that. And one episode that might be helpful for you in your speaking is I did an episode with Carlos Whitaker. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Yes, I've heard him speak at like this Q Ideas, which is like a Christian creative retreat, and he spoke there. Yeah,
totally. So he has a really interesting process, and it's interview on this show of turning speaking gigs into books sold. And so like that just got my brain thinking with all these sororities that you're speaking at or other, it's like, okay, how can you build in book sales? Now, obviously you can negotiate them into the speaking contract.
Or
and
pre-orders.
I'll lower my fee, but you got to get a book for everyone as part of this or something like that. But then he had just a really interesting process on how to get, okay, if you're speaking to a big audience, how do you get 50% of the room to buy a book and then turn that into kind of just book revenue, but also just virality for the book. I want to talk about the new book. So you've got the upcoming book is To the Girl Looking for More, a devotional. How is writing and launching a devotional different from your other books, or is it different?
So I thought I was going to be like so good at it because that's kind of how my Instagram is. And it's based off my Instagram post. I was like, I got this in the bag. And it was a lot more challenging than I thought, because you do get a certain word count. You're like, how do I engage? It's like you're doing all the same process that I said of like, telling a story, bringing scripture in and everything in, but like with way less words and like 600 words. And so I even vowed to do 90 devotions instead of 100, which is more common because I wanted more words in each devotion. And that was a big decision that we talked with the publishers. But I mean, it was so rewarding though, I felt, because it's going to be one of those things when I see girls reading that who read my books and who read my Instagram, but something that I feel like they can wake up before school, or they can wake up before, going to their job and like turn to a devotion. And each of the little like devotions, like To the Girl Who Struggles with This, like it's very point blank because I'm very ADD. And I've always thought people just want straight up to know what they're talking about. Like they don't, sometimes we do too many metaphors. And I think metaphors are beautiful inside a chapter, but not for the titles of things. Like I think we as writers are so creative that we forget that other people who are more like math brain or just are so busy, they're not trying to analyze this like an AP literature class. Like they just need straight up. And so it's very straight up. And I don't know, it was harder than I thought, but it's been so fun as like I've been preparing for pre-orders. And one of my pre-order incentives is I got my publisher to be on board, is that girls can win a trip for them and a friend to come to Universal and with me, because I live in Orlando, for the weekend, like an all expense paid trip.
Cool.
And that's been doing super well. So, because they're like, cool. And I'm like, it creates the initiative. They know me now. They like my writing. It'll be and it's fun for me because I love Harry Potter world. So,
so you feel like that's been working well?
Yeah, I think
moving pre-orders.
Obviously, everyone knows, probably listening to this, if you haven't, I'm sure in all your stuff, you talk about how important pre-orders are. I think, yes, I think sometimes right now people are doing so many, like you get this screensaver, you get this. And I think people are so kind of tired of that. They want an experience. They would rather just, I think, a giveaway of something better, like just knowing they get a chance. And I've also noticed when I'm honest with people, just saying, hey, I really need your help, because pre-orders basically determine like how many books are stocked in each store. They're like, oh, I'll do it. Like, that's easy. And when I'm speaking in person, I've say, hey guys, like if I have ever encouraged you a little bit on Instagram, pre-ordering, it doesn't even cost you anything today. It costs when it ships. They've been way more willing to do it. So I think that having an experience one-on-one, connecting with them and being honest about where you are as an author and how important it is, because I'm not at the point where, like, if it comes to speaking and they pay me versus they buy books, I still got to pay my bills, you know? So I'm like, it's hard for me to say no to the money. But when I go there, I always have an honest conversation. I go, guys, I'm not someone who likes to push things down your throat, but this will be a good book that you will find benefit in. It costs you less than $20. Like most of your makeup costs way more than that. And it will help me a lot. It's the simplest way. You don't have to pay for anything on my Instagram. I don't take ads to not bother you. This is the one thing. And that's why I don't take ads too, is because I'm like, I'm advertising my book every day. Like, so why would I take ads and advertise other people's products as much? Nothing wrong with taking some occasionally, but when I'm already trying to give them, the ad is my book.
I love that. That's great. And so giving them a reason why they should pre-order, and then giveaways over the million bonuses or whatever else, and using the giveaway as a reason why as well. So if anyone's, listening to this, watching this immediately as it comes out, this is before the book is live, so you can pre-order it and enter to win that trip to Universal. It's to the girl looking for more. So check it out. How does that process work? Do they go to your site? Like how do people submit to enter to win? And how are you using that whole pre-order process? So
that's good. They go to a Google form that's in my bio at the Grace Valentine, and they submit it in, and I'm going to do a random raffle. Like, so if you pre-order 5, I will love you, but like, I'm not going to do that. The only way you get an extra entry is if you're on my launch team, which like at this point, my launch team is closed, but, so everyone can only get up to 2 raffle tickets for that. And so it'll just be like, I'll put in an online simulator to do that. But yeah, you can enter by going to my bio at the Grace Valentine, clicking the link, and it'll say like, enter in for the Universal giveaway.
Cool. So you broke up just a little bit. You're just saying you'll put it in an online simulator, and that's what creates a giveaway. So that's smart. And so I guess the only way to get multiple would be to do single book purchases.
Yeah.
I guess like single book purchases and single book.
And at that point, I'll mess that up, and I don't want to promise anyone multiple. I'm like, the only way you can get 2 is if you're on my launch team, but. Other than that, I'm like, I don't know how to add it in the thing, because I don't want to be dishonest. But please.
Have I sent you a copy of this book yet?
No, I want one though.
Right. Well, I'll send you a copy afterwards. There's a whole chapter on launch team. So I love that you're doing that as well, and then tying it into this pre-order giveaway. I think that's super smart. Let's see. Last couple of questions I have is on the podcast. So you've got, it looks like the I'm Tired podcast. Any similarities or crossovers between launching and growing a podcast versus launching and selling a book that you've seen?
So actually I rebranded this summer, and it's now called Water into Wine.
Cool.
And maybe my publisher has not changed their thing, but I changed the rebrand on purpose because I think I created the I'm tired when it was before COVID. And I think it was like, oh my gosh, I'm so quirky. I'm tired. Like life's so hard. Like I'm constantly exhausted. And I think after COVID, a lot of us like reframe that. They go, maybe that wasn't good, but we were going. And also I felt like there was even a privilege aspect of that, of like, I'm tired. And like, I can see my own privilege of being like a white girl. Like, I'm like a lot of people are going through a lot worse things and are probably more exhausted about other bigger things than me. But I rebranded to Water into Wine purposefully because I thought of my Mary Kate, the SEC sorority girl type girl who's probably drinking a little too much. And I'm like, I want her to see something and resonate with it. And I thought about like Barstool Sports is super popular right now with this generation. I always say like one of my biggest competitors is Barstool Sports. They have so many like woman podcasts that are very raunchy and horrible, but Spotify will buy them for like $100 million. And so I was rebranding to be Christian, but also like more relatable. So that's why I'm holding wine on it. And that's the purpose, is that a girl will see that and not feel bad if she went out to a sticky floor bar the weekend before listening to it. It's not the typical Christian podcast. And so that was it. And we probably try to do it. It's me, my friend Ketley. I also added co-host because I do so much alone that it's just been just as me as a friend. It's better for my friend. And what's cool is Ketley comes from a way different background than me. She's Haitian descent, beautiful, amazing. She's one of my best friends, but it also gives me someone else to learn from in that, and it makes it more of a conversation. So those are the two things that I thought as I rebranded. But when it comes to promoting it, I mean, you can do better at like crossing the brand, but I've tried to do similar titles that go well in my mini book. Like there was When You're Overlooked that did well. And so we did a podcast episode on that, but we did a more relatable tone. It's not the same thing I'm going to do in a devotional online on Instagram. It's going to be more storytelling, but I can look at what topics worked on there and replicate it there, but make it more personal because it's a podcast where it's my voice. And so that's kind of how I promote it.
That's super smart. That's great. And I love the testing ground. It sounds like podcast episodes and the mini books can be kind of the testing ground of content for what ultimately gets included in your traditionally published books.
Exactly. That's exactly my thought process.
That's awesome. Well, Grace, this has been fun and very informative. Where can people go to pre-order the book and to find out more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, they can either go to my Instagram at the Grace Valentine, or they can go on my website, www.gracevalentine.org. I'm not an organization. It was just cheaper that way. So don't think I'm like, there's a big group of people. And yeah, you can order To the Girl Looking for More on anywhere books are sold. You should pre-order it and enter my giveaway, and you can enter the giveaway on my Instagram bio. And I have a retreat coming up too in May. So if anyone knows any college age girls, signups are about to close at this time this comes out. And so you'd love for them to come. If like college age or recent grad, it's called Purpose Retreat. And that's also on my Instagram, all the information.
Awesome. Well, check out the book, To the Girl Looking for More. Pre-order, you can enter to win. I mean, you got to be on top of this episode and do it immediately. Otherwise, you can just buy a book.
You're not going to Harry Potter World with me, you know?
Your loss. Bummer. All right. Hey, Grace, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you could be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode.